Time. All right, we'll be
All right, let
looking for
me,
Chinese equities. All right, thank you.
yep, yeah, let me just grab that screen back. Yeah, so the question was, um, if we could screen out um, Chinese related companies that are listed on the major US exchanges. So let me see if I could remember how to do that, but let's go to the screeners. And under screeners, we have this stock screener. Okay, so I'm going to just pick that for now. And those will bring us to our stock screener. And this lists all the securities, you know, that we track on the major US exchanges. So listed on New York Stock Exchange, NASDAQ, and so forth. So it has to be listed on those major US exchanges, but of course, you have like ADRs and so forth that could be stocks or companies that are foreign, different country. So we do have lots of filters up here. And you'll notice like I have tabs. All right, so these will let you tab through new filters. And there is a filter here by country. Okay. So let's take a look if we click on this filter, what's available. So we got all these different, countries available. And we were interested specifically in with China. Right. So if we click here, select China, what we'll get is 254 stocks, okay, that we detected are Chinese related securities. So you could come here and if you wanted to start your analysis, just narrowing it down, because you could see 254 out of 11,281. Um, Now you narrowed it down, start your analysis there. Um, and one of the things to keep in mind is a lot of these are like ADRs, and ADRs are a little bit different. Well, probably a lot different than a common stock for a U.S. company listed on the U.S. exchange. Um, so I'm not going to get too much into it because you'd have to go in there and read the terms of these ADRs. Where you could see here they're American Depository Shares, um, and they could have different conditions, and you don't have exactly the same rights that you do with common stock. So
You know,
common
one of
stock,
the big risks, right, is what we saw happen in Russia. The companies continue to exist, right, but the ADRs go to zero,
right?
and that's been a big I mean, people are worried about Taiwan. In the last 2 years, a lot of the weight on these Chinese stocks is the risk to, what happens if China invades Taiwan? What happens to these companies? They're going to continue to exist and ship all over the world and do things, but your ownership in them may, just disappear.
Yeah, it's not exactly the same, legal rights and ownership rights as a common stock. You do they're different. You should read about them when you know trade in them, and it's just important to really look at them closely or more closely than common stock, because again, you don't have those same legal and ownership rights, that some people might believe they do, like when you buy common stock. You buy Microsoft or Apple. Well, that's a U.S. listed company. You have certain rights to voting and ownership and legal rights, and if you buy all the common stock of, let's say, Microsoft, you own the company, right? So you're the only shareholder, you own the entire company. the ADRs are not like that. You could own all the ADRs, but that doesn't mean you own the company.
Yeah,
You
it's not
own
like
the
you're taking it's not like you're taking the company private, right?
Yeah, exactly. Like the ADRs are just like, it's just their holdings. The structure itself is different. You need to be aware of it. And I think one of the cases like Will brought out, their ADR, uh, well, let's see if they still exist on Russia, right? So uh, let me see if I could, hold on, I'm getting them. So there are ADRs on Russia. And okay, so now they all got delisted, or does or
They're not even at zero, right? They're not even at a penny yet. It's not like,
yeah, unless they're trading somewhere else on the OTC, but they used to trade, and we don't see them. And what happened was that when Russia went to war with Ukraine, a lot of that triggered like lots of different um things with sanctions and so forth. Uh, but what happens is you own an ADR, but which I think those ADRs were rights to uh, the the earnings or cash flow, right? The earnings or cash flow from the companies that they put somewhere. Well, all of a sudden that was gone. And and what legal right, where are you going to go to sue to get those rights? That's the problem. They went, so I think a lot of them just went to zero or got delisted, or who knows what will happen to them. But that's a risk now that you have to consider, because we've seen it happen, right? We've seen it happen in the Russian situation, um, which means now that's kind of a risk that you have to model for. Um, and the companies still exist. They didn't go out of business, right? The companies still exist in Russia. A lot of them, might even be doing better now than they did before, because they were engaged in, a lot of these Russian listed companies were engaged in, uh, like oil. A lot of them were maybe engaged in other like raw materials and metals, and so because that's like what they're known for. So those companies today might actually be doing fine, or making money, or making even more money today than they did, before the war. However, if you own that ADR, you yourself did not benefit. You actually, you were hurt with that investment in there. So it's something to, keep in mind when you're looking at ADRs versus common stock, because it's a different structure, right? It's a very different structure. Um, and
yeah, and our
a lot,
eyes were opened to how that structure can affect an investor, right? I mean,
yeah,
believe me, there were people buying those Russian ADRs thinking it would pass over. Yeah, and they thought they were getting deals. Right now, you know,
yeah, and yeah, and when we look at securities that are listed on the U.S. exchanges, there are different structures just there, of securities. Like, we if you take a look at a closed-end fund, closed-end fund, the structure of that is different than an ETF, and an ETF is different than a common stock, and you have, different risks associated with them, um, different models to price them. Um, like for example, a closed-end fund, you can't, you can't go and just redeem the net asset values, or you can't, like a ETF, gives you more privileges from that perspective than or some of the ETFs than you would with a closed-end fund, because that's what it is. It's closed. But they do have other benefits that right now an ETF can't, that they could go and borrow. They could leverage and borrow um, money and make investments on borrowed money. So there's like a leverage component to it. It could also, invest in less liquid securities because it's closed end, so you can't redeem it. So there are differences in securities that are listed on the major U.S. exchanges you have to be aware of. Could I even like a preferred stock? Preferred stock is different than a common stock. So it's important, to know those differences, so you know your rights, you know your risks, potential rewards, and so forth. So, were there any other questions,
Well,
Will?
someone was asking about Japan, because there was another thing mentioned, it's Japanese stocks. I'm assuming there's a screen to find the Japanese stocks. Now,
So,
these may actually be stocks or ADRs, but again, you got to look into them.
so yeah, so I mean, right here, country Japan, and I select, so 22 came out on our screen. So these would be, the Japanese companies that we detected. Another thing that may help, where let's say you created this screener, called Japan, so this is, let's say you want to just analyze these Japanese stocks, but sometimes, new stocks will pop in. Sometimes maybe something gets delisted, but you're just interested in stocks that we detected are Japan. So you could use this filter and then save it. So let's just say I say save. I don't want to do like say Japan. All right. So I type it in here. I hit save. And what it'll do is it'll pop up in here, your saved filter. And what this will allow you to do is a couple of things. First of all, you could come back to this page. Let's say you have 3 filters here. Let's say you have Japan, market cap, or let's say you have these 2 filters. Well, you could save it. This allows you just to come back and choose your saved filter. So you see I have a bunch of. And once you have your saved filter there are other reports that you could reference this screen. So let's say we go to bull call spread, let's say. Let's see if it's available there. So my bull call spread, right? Let's say I'm looking for it, but I want that filter. I want that filter. Let's just try an example right now. But the idea is there, if I want that filter in here, I could just drop it down and select it. And then it will use that filter from the stock screener, to filter this. And then you could further filter with these additional. So let's just do a quick example. Let's say I go to the stocks and I filter over 100 billion market cap. So I got 143. Let's just, let's say stock type ETF. All right, so now I got 11, right? So now I have these 11 ETFs that met this condition. So let's just save this really quickly. 100 billion, let's see if it works. So I'm going to save this, and let's just do, test. We'll do test. I think I don't have another test. Let's see if that works. So save test. Okay. So now I have it in here somewhere. Test. All right. So refresh my screen. Let's see first if it'll work on this screen. So now, we're back to 11,000. I'm going to come in here and say, find me test. So there we go. So it worked. Now I didn't have to put those filters back in. So let's see if it works on the bull call spread. I'm going to come here. And now I'm on a bull call spread screen. I'm looking for bullish calls, let's say. But I have, 41,000 and I have all these, you could see those sorted by market cap. So I have all these apples and so forth. But let's narrow it down to first test. So we do test, and now we got 441. So you could see SPYs in here now, because remember, I narrowed it down to ETFs. And now I'm just using that group, right? And I could save this. So then I could just save this, my, whatever I called it, test and whatever other filters I have. And what this will do is combine different screeners to keep narrowing down your searches, right? So that's the idea behind that filter. So that's how, so it's just making it a little bit more powerful where, okay, I didn't fit everything. I can't put everything, all the filters in here, but I'll just combine those two different screeners. So that's how you would, you could use that. You could do your watch list. So maybe it has to be in your watch list and has to meet these conditions in your test screener that we said, over 100 billion and whatever. So that's the idea behind that filter. But all right, well, if you have another question, I'll take it, or we could just stop
Hold on,
here.
let me just give a real check. Wow, Bob says this is very helpful and time saving. No other questions, D. It's 9:24. Thanks for joining, everyone. Rob did have a question, I think, about Chevron and its takeover and how to affect that the dividend if you have this stock, whatever. But maybe I'll resend that to you and we can look at that tomorrow. Okay. Awesome job, D, as always. Thanks for the questions, Market Chameleons. Everyone have a great day. Stay safe if you're in Florida. Obviously, we've got this hurricane coming up, so everyone hold on tight if you're down there. Thanks, D.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a